Thanks for joining us, and welcome back to the Watchman on the Wall podcast. Periodically, we'll bring you true stories of angelic encounters, heavenly visitations, near-death experiences, as well as modern-day prophecies that are relevant to us today. When we come back, we'll begin our next episode. Hello, and thanks for joining us on the Watchman on the Wall podcast. This week, I found an interesting podcast from the Prophecy Club. Stan Johnson talks about the unrest that's going on now because of the death of George Floyd. And he asked the question, are the current protests and riots part of the Dumitru prophecy and the beginning of an internal revolution that will start the fall of America? He goes on to talk about other prophecies by Leslie Johnson, Terry Bennett, and others that are possibly linked to an internal revolution that will lead to an eventual attack by Russia. He makes some interesting observations about the unrest that we are seeing all around the country. The following segment is part of that podcast.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Let's talk about the riots that are going on, because the question that I seem to be getting many emails about is this the eternal revolution prophesied by Dumitru Duderman? And I'm going to say the answer is still, as I said yesterday, yes, but not exactly. However, I'm going to change my answer today to yes and more to come. The reason is because the prophecy that Leslie was given and the prophecy that Dumitru was given has been partially fulfilled. So I'm going to show you something that just kind of like came to me last night, sitting watching TV. When I say that, I'm watching the news to find out about what's going on in our beloved nation. And it kept coming to me, and I believe that this is the answer, is that, Stan, all the time you have been saying these prophecies from Leslie are not necessarily in the correct order. So let's first go back and refresh our memory on Dumitru's prophecy, the brief part of it. Then let's go to what Leslie said. Let me show you what I'm talking about, because I'm afraid it's closer than I want to admit. See, because I really don't want this stuff to come. I want our nation to continue to prosper and do well. So, the refresher. The fall of America will start with an internal revolution in America. Started by the communists. Some of the people will start fighting against the government. The government will be busy with internal problems. Then from the oceans, Russia, Cuba, Nicaragua, Central America, Mexico, and two other countries will attack. The Russians will bombard the nuclear missiles in America, and America will burn. Now, January 22, 2006, Leslie was spoken to by the audible voice of God. She was given 7 newspaper headlines, and I assure you that this is accurate, and they are newspaper headlines, because on June 14th of 2008, in the night, as you recall, I've given this story a few times, I had just spoken talking about oil in Israel in Amarillo that night. I said, Lord, I hope you're pleased what we're doing, because it's not going so good. We're spending $3,500 per city in advertising. There's not many people showing up, not many people getting saved. And that night, he spoke to me audibly. First of all, I don't tell you the whole story all the time, but I'll go ahead and tell you more of the story this time. First of all, he spoke audibly and said, Stan, I will give you the money to drill the well in Israel. And I answered back, and I said, the oil well? But there was no response. So I went on to sleep. Now, here's the part I typically don't get into. But for the rest of the evening, It was only the second time in my life that this had happened, but it seemed like I was kind of in a schoolroom with the Lord all night long, and He was speaking a lot of things to me, and unfortunately most of them I can't remember, but it was almost like He was just speaking them into my subconscious. But part of what I do remember is He said, when those prophecies I gave your wife, that's exactly what He said. He didn't say Leslie. He said, when those prophecies I gave your wife begin to come to pass, then people from all directions will begin to turn and listen to your ministry. And then He showed me this part I haven't told you, but He showed me Leslie holding up actual newspapers. And these headlines were on the newspapers. Now, what that does is that confirms, because in the mouth of two or three witnesses, let a thing be established. So that confirms that not only was Leslie accurate, and I believe her without this confirmation, but in that this was the eternity voice. And I've only had the eternity voice speak to me three times. This was one of the 3 times. So I absolutely positively know what I'm about to tell you is accurate. Now, first of all, she's been saying the whole time that these aren't necessarily going to be fulfilled in this order. Now, I thought that they would be turned around a little bit, but what I had not considered, what He's been speaking to my heart for the last 24 hours, is that I really need to take that to heart, that they're not necessarily given in the order they will be fulfilled. So let me reverse it around. First of all, this was the order they were given to her. Israel refuses help to America. Omer ushers in Palestinian state. We do not know what Omer is. Catastrophe hits America. We do not know the catastrophe. One of America's greatest times of need, Israel's attacked. America sends troops. Chaos reigns as Americans protest help to Israel. Then she heard my voice quoting Dumitru Duderman, the fall of America will start with an internal revolution. Now, here's what I never considered until just last night. What if it will start with an internal revolution is not last, but what if that's first? In other words, this is one of those 7 newspaper headlines. I mean, all over in the news. What was it, Saturday night? They said there was riots in 76 American cities, and there's 25 curfews declared all across America. This is Saturday night. It's gotten worse since then. And 19 different places have had to call in the National Guard. And it doesn't say, and also the President Trump just called in 1,600, and this is military. This is not National Guard. This is military. 1,600 military troops to guard the White House in Washington, D.C. That's serious. And they're also talking about bringing up that Insurrection Act of, 1806. That's real serious. So here's the point. What kept coming to me last night is that it's really not in the order that is going to be fulfilled. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to say that this is the start of the internal revolution. This is one of the 7 headlines. Now, I don't know what's going to be next, and I certainly hope that this gets back to normal. But I'm going to say this, and please, I'm not setting dates here, but I can see that Shane Warren may be correct when he said America's judgment arrives in 2020. He said that to Prophecy Club back in 2012, but I think he got it even a few years before then. What if this is the first of those 7 newspaper headlines, the fall of America will start with an internal revolution? Again, Shane Warren said America's judgment arrives in 2020. And then Terry Bennett said that the angel Gabriel told him that America would fall in 2021. And while he did not say this in exactly these words, he said it indirectly in these words, and that is that the tribulation would start in 2022 and the return of Jesus would be 2028. Please do not say I said any dates. I'm quoting other people. I do not know when Jesus is going to return. I do not know. God has not spoken any dates to me. It may very well be that the first of these 7 headlines, these 7 warnings, have been fulfilled with the murder of one George Floyd. It may very well be that in eternity, we're going to be able to point back and say the killing of George Floyd killed America. It may very well be that we're going to say 3 police officers holding him down and one onlooking with one his knee on his neck suffocated him and killed the man when 2 people were videotaping it. Maybe the thing that started the internal revolution, and from there it's all downhill. So that brings us to the next question. What if one side, either side, starts shooting at the other? In other words, whether it's the protesters start shooting at the police, or the police, by the way, that's the way we say that down here in Texas, police. God gets you northerners talking right. Or the police start shooting at the protesters. Either side could start the next part, which said some of the people will start fighting against the government. Either side. Oh, listen to what I've got for you today.
We'll be right back after this important message. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. And here's the best part. It's completely free. Anchor has a creation tool which will allow you to record and edit your podcast. This can be done right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you. This will allow it to be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. So take a minute to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. We continue now with Stan Johnson talking about the current unrest and the coming internal revolution.
Either side could start the next part, which said some of the people will start fighting against the government. Either side. Oh, listen to what I've got for you today. Again, started by the communists. Headline: Police truck caught delivering bricks for protesters to throw at private property. This comes to us from Hal Turner, including pictures and videotape. HalTurnerRadioShow.com. June 3rd. I'll read the headline again. Police truck caught delivering bricks for protesters to throw at private property. Well, or police or anything else they want to throw at. It goes on to say the delivery of pallets of bricks to neighborhoods were quite coincidentally where rioters were going to show up later. Those rioters then would throw the bricks at whatever. Who is providing the bricks? He goes on to say the Democrat government in Democrat-run cities. I didn't say that. Hal Turner said that. He also says that in Boston, closed-circuit video cameras caught Northeastern University police pickup trucks with uniformed officers, I've seen the video, unloading bricks into an alleyway for rioters to use shortly after. It goes on to say Boston police were unloading these bricks. In response to a widely circulated video on social media, in Houston, Texas, pallets of bricks found on streets where riots took place had delivery bills of lading showing they were ordered by the Houston police. In Frisco, Texas, pallets of bricks left on a street corner for rioters were coned off with cones carrying the ownership lettering of City of Frisco Utility. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean City of Frisco delivered the bricks. It certainly points in that direction, in light of the other things. Then in New York City, pallets of bricks were left in the bicycle lane. What America is now seeing as these riots is actually criminal conspiracy perpetrated by government against its own people. In other words, this, my brothers and sisters, is all a setup. My opinion? Here's an audio clip I pulled off of HalTurnerRadioShow.com, and it's talking specifically about people that are setting up bricks for the people to throw and who is doing it, and many times the police are behind it.
Kansas City police say they're aware of people stashing bricks and rocks around the plaza area to use during today's protest.
We have located some bricks that have been left in a couple of areas. We're going to do our best to get those picked up and moved so that they're not used. I don't know who would have put them there. I don't think that they're doing any type of construction or anything like that. I sense that they're probably there for nefarious use.
This right here?
Yeah, they put them there on
This
purpose.
the setup.
They put them there on purpose,
Y'all know where
bro.
we at.
They gonna set them hoes right up on the route of
Y'all know what building this is
Come
right
on
here.
now.
I ain't even gonna say what name it is.
Hey, where do them bricks go to? Where do them
This
bricks
is
go
set
to?
up.
Where do them bricks
We
go
gotta
to?
do better.
Ain't no damn construction.
Gotta do better.
Ain't no construction around here.
I see you.
Ain't no damn construction around here. You just gonna set a pallet of bricks right there. Oh, okay.
Listen,
Bruh, they got them bricks, bruh. We are protesting. Some random ass bricks, bruh. Ain't no construction, bruh. Just some random ass bricks sitting here.
Look, there's another pile of these random bricks. That's what they did in Atlanta. That's what they did in Dallas. They set that up. That's like an invitation.
The whole COVID-19 was a setup. My opinion, the whole Mueller thing, all of the 3 attacks on Donald Trump for the impeachment, the COVID-19, all of this, it's all a setup. Why? Why is it a setup? Well, depends on how you want to look at that. God's point of view, because God's bringing America down, because he cannot stand the filth and the sin in this nation anymore. And from another point of view, it's the deep state that doesn't like the fact that their banking system is, other sources say it has, past tense, has been taken away from them. And we're about to get a whole new banking system that does not include the corrupt bankers stealing from us anymore. Specific local governments, according to Hal Turner, have been proven to be directly involved in facilitating violent criminal acts against our own American police. New Russian policy allows use of atomic weapons against non-nuclear strike. Do you think it's an accident that just yesterday, in the middle of all of this, President Vladimir Putin Tuesday endorsed Russia's nuclear deterrent policy, which allows him to use atomic weapons in response to conventional strikes targeting the nation's critical government and military infrastructure? In other words, if America were to send some kind of, basically any kind of attack, to take out something of Russia or one of its allies, then that would give Russia the permission to use nuclear weapons. In other words, they've kind of drawn a line in the sand, said, go ahead, I dare you, step over that line. In other words, they're looking for a fight. They're looking for an excuse to attack and destroy America. Next headline, there's only more. Report, LAPD arrests man, quote, armed to the teeth in National Guard uniform. Dated May 31, Breitbart.com. A heavily armed man wearing a National Guard uniform was arrested early Tuesday morning on assault weapon charges in Los Angeles, according to Fox 11. Reporters said the arrest occurred near protests over the death of George Floyd in the city's downtown area. And Fox LA has learned that LAPD arrested this 31-year-old while dressed as, listen carefully, impersonating a National Guard. He was armed to the teeth and was booked on assault charges. The LAPD says federal charges may come next. The point is, the suspect was taken into custody across the street from the Los Angeles Police Department headquarters, and he was dressed like a National Guard soldier. So what happens if he had started firing at the protesters, or if he'd have started firing at the Los Angeles Police Department? He's all dressed up as National Guard. Now, if he started firing at the protesters, and then maybe he runs, then of course they're going to say the National Guard's killing us. Okay, so then what happens? The protesters, they pull out their shooting irons, and all of a sudden, my friends, we are in a bloodbath. That's just how easily it could start. And this guy here dressed up in a National Guard uniform, they need to throw the book at this guy. I'm telling you that this deep state is trying to destroy our nation. And sadly to say, they're doing a good job of it. And sad to say, the Russians are helping any place they can. Next headline. Russian Navy welcomes ballistic missile submarine. This comes to us from TurkishMaritime.com. Part of the article says, it is first modernized a Bory A. Now, it goes on to all the numbers here. Essentially, it's a big, powerful, brand new Russian submarine that carries 16 of the most advanced ballistic missiles that are able to hit America from just about any place on the planet. That's what essentially it's saying. And they're welcoming it now to their brand new submarine force. You know, do you remember yesterday I read this one? Urgent, 50% of Russian Navy now deployed to the Arctic Ocean. This is June 1, 2020. Intelligence sources are reporting that a full 50% of Russia's entire Navy are now deploying to the Arctic Ocean, a perfect location to launch a massive strike against the United States. I didn't say that. These people said that. The Russian Northern Fleet remains the country's main military force in the Arctic, something that Defense Minister Sergei Sugai, I can't even pronounce it, stressed, helps pronounce. He goes on to say, in other words, they're preparing for war. So let's back up. What do we got here? We've got 7 headlines, and those headlines may play out like this. The fall of America will start with an internal revolution. Israel refuses help to America. Omar ushers in Palestinian state. In other words, the first one might be the internal revolution. And then the other ones play later, meaning that the first of the 7 signs to the fall of America may already be here. Maybe the storm that Shane Warren saw all across America was not a hurricane at all. Maybe it was a George Floyd retaliation, and for good reason, but maybe it was all set up. Maybe these 4 officers were told to go out and do. I mean, after all, they did have the exact video footage from exactly the right angle, and even the officer sat there and he saw he was being filmed, being videos, but he didn't get up. The guy's saying, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. He didn't get up. He looked at the camera. He saw he was being videotaped. I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, all of this is a setup. The 3 attacks, the impeachment attempts against Trump, the COVID-19, now the riots, all of these are, let's put it this way. If we were a God-fearing nation, none of this would be happening. None of it's happening. So what I'm saying is, yes, I'm saying for the first time, yes, we are in the internal revolution. We're on the right road, heading down the road to the fall of America. When you get the police that are refusing to go out and to stop these looters, and instead they're actually providing bricks for them to throw, big problem. About that time, you see Russia stand up and say, oh, by the way, if we're hit even with a conventional strike, we're still going to use nukes. Then you see a man dressed up in a National Guard uniform, armed to the hilt. Why is he doing that? Is he going to start firing at the protesters? Then the protesters say, okay, well, you guys fired at us. Never mind, it really wasn't a National Guard soldier. But somebody like that could start it. About that time, Russia comes out and they're arming to the teeth. They're they're warming up their weapons.
We're going to stop the broadcast right there. We certainly hope this isn't the start of an internal revolution, and that we can go back to having peace on our streets. But with all this going on around us, it does make you wonder what might be coming next. We'll be right back after this. Are you looking for a good quality used car but don't want to pay an arm and a leg? Well, come into Rainey Used Cars. We have the largest selection in the Southeast. Whether you want a pickup or a quality SUV from mom, you'll find a variety of vehicles to choose from. We even finance. So come in today. You'll find a Rainey Used Cars located near you. Thanks again for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. Also, give us a like. We welcome any comments or suggestions you might have. We also ask you to subscribe so that you will be notified of all our future episodes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Watchman on the Wall podcast.